Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I'm going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e or D&D 5e, and we're going to talk about how to play Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and this is a workshop. This is the Warlock Basics. This is 101. This is the first bit of or kernel of information you might need when you are playing a Warlock. Now, the first thing about a Warlock is that I'm going to be, if I give you any specific examples during this series, I'm going to be using the pre-made character sheet for the Warlock that you can find on the official Dungeons & Dragons website. Now, if you want additional information about the Warlock, you will find the Warlock entry on page 105 of the Player's Handbook, and that details the Warlock. All the information you'll need is there. The Warlock is not a master of magic, but more of a leech, someone who forms an agreement or a pact with an otherworldly patron, or patron should I say. Now in this case, I've presented you with a demon, a Balor, and this is our little Warlock here entering into an agreement, but it doesn't need to be a demon. It could be some other creature. It could be something from, say, the far realm, like a beholder if you wanted. You could utilize that as a patron. Yet again, you could swap that one out, and maybe that's not the patron for you. Maybe your patron is a very powerful dragon. There's lots of different ways you can do this. Or maybe something even stranger than that. Maybe it's not a dragon, maybe it's some sort of night walking creature. Now, the different types of patrons that you can pick up are the Fae, the Fiend, and the Otherworldly, or should I say the Great Old One. Okay? A Warlock's patron either gives them power, or they give them information or knowledge that allows them to gain power. That's how a Warlock works. They are actually a really good class for somebody to play when they are starting out and they are a beginner and they want to play a magic user. Now, I normally would not advise anybody to play a magic user when they are starting out. That seems like a very silly thing to do, but you can do it, and I think a Warlock is one of those classes that will allow you to do it without running into too many problems. And the simple reason is because they have so few spells and they're relatively simple. There isn't an awful lot going on that you need to understand. But they do work very differently to the other casters. In fact, they're about as unique as they get. Now, Warlocks are, as I said, really good for beginners, but they are also nowhere near as powerful, I feel, certainly at higher levels. You can probably find that a Warlock will do fine at lower levels. There's not too much going on. They actually seem to work out pretty well, but I've found at the very high tiers of play, they just cannot keep up with something like a wizard or a bard or a cleric. Now, Warlocks are really good at blasting magic or attacking magic. They are good at doing something over and over again. They won't have a lot of different magical skills or spells that they can cast. These things are called invocations, but they can do them often quite repetitively, endlessly. It's almost as if they've got infinite energy to actually produce these spells, and a lot of those invocations do not burn up a spell slot, which is a good thing because they don't get very many. In fact, at first level, you are only going to get one spell slot, which means you can only cast one spell in the day, and that's it. The kinds of how many spells do you get at first level? You're only going to get two. You only know two spells. Now these are first level spells. Your cantrips, you only get two. It's like almost half the number of the other casters. So therefore, picking up other types of spells that might have a different focus that aren't attacking is often not the choice for a Warlock. A Warlock tends to be a character who picks up spells that does damage, punishes the enemy, pumps out power, gives them more influence to manipulate people. And that's one of the things about the Warlock. Its key focus is blasting magic, but yes, you can take the short rest. And this is one of the things, I'm going to go into the short rest with the Warlock. Warlocks have a tendency to have to short rest often, pretty much after every single engagement. I found that almost everybody who's ever played a Warlock at my table has insisted or really wanted to have a short rest, and the reason being is they burnt everything up during that combat session. But Warlocks are really good at manipulation and knowledge. That's their speciality, but because they've usually got to have a high charisma, the thing you want to be looking for is manipulation. And the types of manipulation they use aren't the sorts of things that are just sort of gentle persuasion. They are a little bit darker in their nature. So, as I said, the fundamentals of a Warlock: manipulating people and creatures through trickery, the deception skill. It's one of their proficiencies. They can pick that up if they want to. Or if you're really, it's a bit tricky to pick up intimidation and threatening the NPCs and the creatures that you interact with all the time. This is because you're not exactly intimidating. You're certainly dark and mysterious, but as a physical specimen, you're probably not going to be coated in heavy armor. You get access to light armor and simple weapons, but it's not really going to give you the advantage that a lot of the other classes have. So physically, you do not look that intimidating. So picking up the intimidation skill as a proficiency, which you can do, isn't really going to pay off unless you have a dungeon master you can convince that your Warlock is actually a threat to their monsters or their NPCs. Warlocks need to rest often, as I said, and Lewis has just pointed out that a short rest usually gets back their limited spells. Invocations, often you need to take a short rest or even a long rest to be able to get them back. Warlocks, as I said, wear light armor, so they're even easier to take down or kill than a wizard. So you have to have mage armor, or you need to stay with a party behind the front line and possibly behind in between the back line. You really want to be the sandwich in the middle. I actually found that as a dungeon master, hitting a Warlock is easier than a wizard, because usually a wizard is going to have mage armor straight away. That's the first spell that they will cast at the day, and they'll have that at level 1. Often players won't do that until later on, because they're going to be burning up their only spell slot unless they take rests, and that's always going to be a real pain for them. Eldritch Blast is absolutely vital as a cantrip for the Warlock, because the class abilities and features are all built around pumping up that Eldritch Blast. Now the great thing about Eldritch Blast is, even though it's a cantrip, it's force damage. It does a fair amount of damage for a cantrip out of the cantrip family, so there are some benefits in having that. But as I said, the whole class is built around the blasting magic of that Eldritch Blast. Spell selection is going to be very, very limited, and you will be able to expand things with invocations, but because it's so limited and you have so few choices in terms of the spells that you know, you're not going to be picking up a lot of utility spells. It just won't be an option. It's not something that you can do. Warlocks don't have that option. Wizards can, but a Warlock, it's very, very limited. I would say that unless you have mage armor, picking up the invocation Armor of Shadows is very, very important. Simply because you've got an invocation and you don't have to burn up that spell slot if you want to use that. You're going to get more spell slots as you level up, but it's usually at the most you might have 2 in the medium section of your level, and then as you get higher, the higher tiers, you're going to be maybe 3 or 4. But it's rough because you don't get a lot of spell slots. Charisma should be your highest skill, highest ability, and if you don't have it pumped up, you're going to have a lot of trouble doing. Almost all of your skills are revolving around charisma, and all of your magic and how you cast it is revolving around your charisma. I would recommend having at least a 16 in charisma, even if you've got some negatives in some of your other abilities, simply because this is what you're supposed to do well. It's your your personal presence that pulls your magic together, allows you to negotiate with somebody who's probably a lot more powerful than you to give you magic and power and knowledge. And also it's part of your ability to manipulate other people and other creatures. Warlocks are striving for knowledge and magic, and this means power to them. So you should really be proficient in Arcana. You don't have to be, but if you don't have another a wizard or a sorcerer in the party with Arcana, people are going to be looking to your Warlock to be able to deal with those sorts of checks. And I would recommend at least having Arcana, either through a background or taking it as a proficient skill for your class. Warlocks answer to patrons such as the Fae, the Fiend and mysterious entities. And as I said, I've just shown you a collection of different entities that you could use, and there's no limit. As the Dungeon Master or the player, you can create as many different patrons as you like. Invocations are the backbone of the Warlock, and in particular the ones that don't use up a spell slot. The ones that don't burn up a spell slot are the ones you can recast multiple times, and this will allow you to actually pump out spells, particularly the ones that might be really useful to you, multiple times. And it's almost as if you've got yourself a cantrip when you're using an invocation that doesn't use a spell slot. One of the great things about the spells that a Warlock has is they don't have to prepare anything. They only know a few select spells, and they either can only cast one or two of them in a day or before they go and have a rest, or they can just keep pumping those few spells that they do know out constantly. Warlocks aren't really powerful. As I said, I think Warlocks are better as a multi-classing option for characters. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't play a Warlock to a higher level. You can, but I've found that a lot of my players have got quite upset at the power difference as they leveled up. So I think Warlocks are actually quite good at level 1, level 2 and level 3. A couple of levels in a Warlock combined with another class can work really well. Warlocks can also be built around not just their magic but melee attacks, Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Chain, things like that, where you start using weaponry of some kind. Weapons that you can create out of your very power, the power within you that's been granted to you. So this is the gist of the Warlock. I don't know much more than that. I think you'll find that the Warlock is one of those classes where people want to play something that's a little bit darker, a bit more grittier, someone who has a few flaws, might have some personality traits that aren't completely beneficial to a party. But one of the things to remember is, because you are so squishy, you should not be running away. And once your patron is not hanging around, we'll get rid of the patrons, you should be hanging out with your party, because if you don't, you will not last long. Warlocks are not really designed to be going and tanking anything. They're not really designed to go off and hang out with a whole lot of monsters. So make sure you have your party with you so you don't have to contend with getting crushed like a bug, because that's what's going to happen. Now, if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. If you aren't already subscribed and you like this content, then hit that subscribe button. There's also a bell button beside the subscribe button which you can click onto, and that will get you an occasional notification, which means you get sent basically an email every time I make a video occasionally. It shouldn't be all the time. The other aspect is if you have any questions, I'm going to answer those questions at the end of this during the live stream. If you're not part of the live stream, I will answer your questions in the comments. So put your questions into the comments. I will answer those questions as best I can. I'm going to do additional videos on the Warlock. This is just the first step. Much like the Wizard, there will probably be at least 9 or 10 more videos to come out on the Warlock. So we're going to get into some depth on this. If you have had experience with a Warlock and you disagree with me, by all means, set me straight in the comments or in the chat. Now, if you want to support my channel, then you watch more of my videos. That's really helpful to me. Also, if you want to really support me, I don't do Patreon, but if you buy things from online purchases through Amazon, then I usually have an affiliate link down in the description which you can click on, and that allows you to purchase something. I get a small commission, you pay exactly the same price, and you don't even have to buy the thing I've linked to. You just go through that link and then do a search for whatever it is you want, purchase that, and I get a small commission because you went through my link and you pay the same price. So it's great. And hey, let us finish up and say, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. There's my big dice. We'll put my big dice in the way. All right, no, we won't put my big dice in the way because I don't think that's really helpful for the situation.